I'm Steph Garcia Cichosz with D1 Ticker, and I am delighted to be joined today by Ed Kull, Director of Intercollegiate Athletics for Fordham. Ed, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be with you. Great to be here in Atlanta, College Football Hall of Fame.
NIL Summit, the inaugural event. Well, let's talk NIL. We are wrapping up the first year. How has Rams Athletics really engaged in NIL? Have there been any really intriguing deals that student athletes have engaged in?
So it's been a tremendous learning. Obviously, that even comes to fruition at this conference, this summit of kind of the recap of the first year of NIL. And from my perspective, kind of being a non-traditional athletic director, I kind of saw this as a really important movement early on. So we did a lot of different things, from Jeremy Darlow's Darlow Rules, got him in early with his curriculum about 2.5 years ago. We're original members of Influencer. We have Team Ultimus. We have Jason Belzer Student Athlete Empowerment Group. I've worked a lot of years with Vince Thompson and his Melt crew down here. So anything we could do to help our student athletes at Fordham University in the mecca of the world in New York City has been really important to me. So it's great having our student athletes here. It's great being one of the few athletic directors here at the summit. There's been a lot of interesting deals, whether that be cell phone companies or different brands offering trade opportunities. It's intriguing to see the perspective of the brand, and that's what's been fun here so far at the summit. What's important to them? Not just the matter of a successful student athlete who's successful on the playing surface or has a huge social media following. What are they trying to achieve? And that's kind of some of the interesting takeaways I have from today.
NIL is really all about storytelling, isn't it? Well, I want to dive a little bit into your background. You have a unique perspective as an athletic director. You worked in sports marketing. You managed brand partnerships for Powerade. How are you leveraging that experience to help support Fordham student athletes?
So in a weird way, for a lot of folks, I know the whole NIL conversation is uncomfortable. Weird for me is that I do feel very comfortable in this space. So whether it was vitamin water or it was Powerade, it was my years at Coca-Cola, we did a lot of athlete endorsements, especially by region, by city. And so seeing our student athletes get deals specifically for certain regional needs or appearances, or now obviously heavy social media, I'm comfortable in the athlete endorsement space. And I think it's great that our student athletes have the opportunity to not only make some dollars, but also to build their brand and build their future, because life after college athletics is an important part of this, and something we don't talk enough about, whether that be internships or jobs, and building your brand is a major part of that. So my perspective is, these student athletes are so impressive. They do it in the classroom, they do it at our place in service and engagement. They have loud voices in terms of political unrest, social unrest, financial distress, and they're our future. So I think this is great. I know it's alarming to a lot of folks in the direction it's going, but I just think it's a beautiful thing to see these young people really act as leaders, because they truly are. They represent everything that's positive in our collegiate athletic space.
Well, we talk about building a brand. That sounds a little bit like a buzzy phrase. What is the reality for, again, Fordham student athletes? What questions are they coming to you with? What concerns do they have? How do they really feel about being a brand more than just a person?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we talk a lot about legal advice or having a CPA in terms of the tax ramifications or paying their IRS bills. But I'll be honest with you, some student athletes really have an understanding of what it means and want to really create an identification of their own brand, whether it be for an industry they want to work in, an industry they want to expand on, if it is their social media knowledge and the equity they have in that space. But also, a lot of student athletes don't want to be involved in this. I think that's important. That said too, is a lot of student athletes realize they have a heavy schedule. They are full-time workers as college athletes, and they don't want to take on more. So I think those that have a balance and understanding of that, it's important, because there is a huge commitment.
It takes a lot of time to be an influencer, that's for sure. Well, we touched a little bit on solutions and all the great partners that you have at Fordham. What have you implemented department-wide that is really hitting, that you are saying, yes, we're going to keep this going, this solution is working for our student athletes?
So in terms of NIL, I think it's offering them these these opportunities to speak to folks. So we're lucky at Fordham. There's a bunch of folks that work closely with us, whether it is a Jason Belzer or it's an Eric Liebler at G3 Marketing. Dan Lust is a lawyer in the space. He's an alum of ours. How do we utilize the experts in our New York City area that work in the sports industry, that work in sports media, and really allow them to be mentors and advisors in a way? I know that's the uncomfortableness, is like, oh, as administrators, we're not involved. And truly we're not in terms of negotiating or brokering deals for our student athletes, but how do we make sure that they understand truly where all of these resources are, and these alumni and these professionals in the space can really help them and connect the dots so that they can have conversations and evaluate the opportunities fairly. I think that's really some people that we trust, and creating credibility is essential for our student athletes.
Well, as we move into year 2, what are some key issues that are on your radar right now?
I think the question that we all have, including myself, is the role of the alum, right? The role of the booster. So every year, and I have a development background, athletic development, every year in athletic development, you always send out the rules of what a booster cannot do per NCAA rules, in terms of purchases, attending events, sponsoring, etc. Now, you're almost adding another page to these rules of, if you are interested in getting involved in NIL, here's how to go and move forward. So it's really educating those alums and those boosters accordingly on what they're allowed to do. And that's where having a support mechanism for them is important, an independent party that can help guide them. That, to me, I think is where the questions or the scrutiny is currently coming, is the comfort level of the role of the alum or the booster in this.
Well, just recently, the state of Illinois passed new legislation that athletic departments can help out student athletes when it comes to actually engaging in deals. That kind of cuts out the importance of a collective. If this was to be implemented nationwide, how would that impact the workload that your current staff has? How would that change the flow and the priorities for you?
There's definitely the need for almost full-time staff, for sure, for NIL. Whether that's being based out of your compliance office, whether that's being based out of your student development piece, the ability to support the student athlete that way, to your earlier questions, mentally, emotionally, physically, intellectually in this situation. So staff is definitely automatic in terms of investment in this area. A lot of folks have asked me here thus far in this summit what my thoughts are in terms of the regulations. Obviously, we know the stance of the NCAA. I think a lot of state legislations are kind of varying. I think you're really going to see a lot of the conferences have to play a strong role in this, because state by state it's going to be challenging no matter what conference you are. Multiple states make up members in multiple conferences, so the conferences are going to have to almost create a little bit of a either an agreement, whether that be a handshake or verbal, but to allow and ensure that there's the feeling of balance and fair play amongst those member schools. But it's not an easy challenge. I don't have a simple answer there, but I don't think it's the states. Obviously, we know it's not going to be NCAA. So how do our conferences align? And I even had that conversation. We're in the Atlantic 10 for most of our sports, but we play Patriot League football, and obviously the Patriot League has a good unification amongst their members, similar to the Ivy League. We know a lot about the Power Five. So then how does everybody properly align and almost kind of pick your lane? It's going to be an interesting conversation as we move forward.
Has there been too much pressure to get NIL right for athletic directors? Now, you are in a unique situation. You know brands, you know partnerships. This space is a little bit familiar for you, but for some of your administrative peers that maybe don't have that background, has this just been a little bit overwhelming?
Yeah, I sense a lot of frustration, and I understand the concerns of amateurism and what that means, and the idea of paying student athletes or them earning dollars for services rendered is uncomfortable. But I think we all have been paying attention to the college football playoff. We've all been paying very close attention to March Madness. That's not going away. It's getting bigger. Media deals. We're waiting on the Big Ten's next media deal. We're talking billions of dollars. And I also think, in terms of what we've also recognized or really confirmed throughout the pandemic, we are not in a position to ask our university presidents for more dollars, more support. So as an institution, to support college athletics, how do we create additional revenue streams? How do we create additional lines of support to facilities, for the expenses, et cetera, for coaches' salaries, for operational expenses? We have to be creative, and it needs more of a business approach. So I think the traditional approach, unfortunately, has always been tiltering. I think NIL really pushes that over the top. And it is a business on many levels. And we always say in terms of a Catholic school that I work for, there's no mission without margin, right? In terms of of getting the successes and the outcomes you want.
Well, sticking back to that staffing up model, do you think that we'll see, entire units dedicated to NIL in the future?
I guess the answer to that depends on the volume we're talking about. Institution like Fordham that probably has 70 or 80 or close to 100 now NIL deals. It was a smaller mid-major school compared to some of the Power Fives that are probably doing a lot larger ones. I don't know what the volume will look like. I'm meeting some student athletes out there that have 70 deals themselves. Our male and female athlete of the year last night have almost 70, 75 individual NIL deals. That's remarkable to me. So if that continues to grow, we're going to need more staff based on the volume and the need there. And also, it'll depend on how the regulation comes into effect.
How can mid-majors really allocate resources so that student athletes have the very best support that they can when it comes to NIL?
I truly think it is all the support mechanisms we talked about in terms of developing their individual brands, giving them identity, giving them a voice. And obviously a place like New York City for us, we have a ton of resources and opportunities at our fingertips, but really kind of playing to the strength of your institution, whether it's academic success, athletic success, or your alumni network. And I think the students will be a driving force in telling you what their needs are.
Well, let's wrap with New York City, Fordham, based in this beautiful big market. Is there a unique advantage for Fordham to bring student athletes in when it comes to saying, hey, you can come do NIL deals in the center of the world?
I truly believe so. We have a tremendous institution, a top 50 academic institution, great internships. I think it's a big recruiting tool to come to Fordham, get a business degree, and work in Manhattan and New York City. So how do we continue to leverage that? Our alumni enjoy the mentoring and advising piece. I think NIL sponsorships are very similar to internships and jobs that way for a lot of our alumni around the tri-state area. So I think we've been very fortunate. They've gotten behind this and been very supportive. And I think it's something that will help us as a mid-major institution moving forward, where we may not have the facilities or the operational budgets of some of our larger competitors, but that can give us a good advantage.
Well, Ed, we are wrapping up year one with this beautiful NIL Summit. So thank you so much for joining us today and for giving us all of this great insight. And we're excited to see how Rams Athletics continues to take advantage of NIL.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.